BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. BlackBoxNed88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And just a quick reminder, every Monday is Zodiac Mondays. Wednesday is an Ask Me Anything. That's an AMA, so please drop your questions below for things that you would like discussed here on the show. And Friday is an Anything Goes. Any subject is fair game, mostly talking about true crime, serial killers, the Zodiac Killer, but any subject is welcome. Alright, so please share some ideas in the comment section about what you would like to hear about on this channel, and let's get started. Okay, hello everybody. Today is Monday, another Zodiac Monday. Welcome to the show. I would like to give a big thank you to everybody who checked out last week's Anything Goes Friday segment, which was talking all about the Son of Sam murders from the 1970s and the actions of the Manson family in the late 1960s. And I would like to continue onward with these discussions at looking at a possible link among all three of them, the Zodiac Killer, Charles Manson and his family, and David Berkowitz and the Son of Sam murders. This is going to be a very broad discussion, and then at some points it's going to get very precise in talking about other people's individual theories. I have this bad habit of referring to listening to podcasts and radio shows as a project. I first said it in 2019 when I was like, I want to start this new project. I want to go through The Hour of the Time by William Cooper and just listen to as many episodes as I can. And I did that. And William Cooper is someone who has heavily influenced me in a lot of ways, particularly in the world of politics. But I will digress from that. William Cooper is perhaps most famous for his comments about UFOs and writing the book Behold a Pale Horse. And I just saw this meme on Facebook where somebody had said, what was the most influential book in your life? And it has a very artistic design to the meme. But so many people in the comments section were saying that Behold a Pale Horse by William Cooper was the most influential book in their life. I don't know if it was targeted only to like a specific category or something, or a specific demographic of people rather, but a lot of people were saying that, so he'll come up in this discussion later on. But anyway, that was one thing that I did in 2019. Last year in 2020, I decided to go back through the old backlog of World Crisis Radio, which is hosted by Webster Tarpley, and listen to everything starting from 2010 onward. That's where it began. And I made it from January all the way to about October of World Crisis Radio. I didn't complete the mission, so maybe I'll go back in time and do that later on. But this year, I finally sat down and started a new project. I know it's not a real project, it's just listening to podcasts and archived radio shows, but I wanted to listen to the entirety of the Tate LaBianca radio program. The Tate LaBianca show that has been put out by Brian Davis and his lovely co-host. And there are going to be a lot of people named Davis. It is utterly shocking how many people that are connected to Manson family investigations named Davis. But he's actually broadcast out of Roanoke, Virginia, which isn't too far from me here in West Virginia. And I knew exactly where I wanted to start with the Tate LaBianca radio program, and that was an interview that was done by none other than Howard Davis, the author of the Zodiac Manson Connection. And we'll get to some of his material later on. Howard Davis has a prime suspect in the Zodiac case named Bruce Davis, and it's already starting, right? But I have talked a lot about Bruce Davis in the past on the channel, and there's some things that we probably should address if we're going to do any type of Zodiac, Manson, Son of Sam connection. I think it would be inappropriate to exclude all of the Bruce Davis theories. But I wanted to look at the bigger picture to begin with. And that is going to focus on four particular words, or four particular terms, four particular ideas, four particular belief systems. And those are Luciferianism, Satanism, environmentalism, and Scientology. This is, I think, very important to discuss in relation to the similarities and connections among the Zodiac Killer Charles Manson and the Son of Sam murders. Because, first let's begin with Luciferianism, because I was heavily influenced by William Cooper back in 2019, he talked a lot about Luciferianism, and this stems from a belief that there are people in the elite circles around the world who practice a form of Luciferianism, which is that Jesus and Lucifer were one and the same, and that the way that you liberate humanity is by destroying it. And do they actually believe this? No, not really. It is just a justification for the destructive tendencies that come from being an oligarch, from being in an elite circle. That lust for power gets justified if you are exporting this type of destructive behavior and these destructive actions onto the world. Now, you might be thinking, okay, this is just going to be some wild, crazy conspiracy stuff. And yes, it will be. But I've tried to approach these things with an open mind, and if you disagree with any of these things here, please put your ideas in the comment section and say why you disagree with it. But alright, so it's the idea that the elites and the oligarchs, the people who have the power, form their own belief systems, and they want a belief system that justifies their desire and lust for power. Now, you might be thinking, well, you could just destroy humanity so many ways. You don't have to do it by, influencing the way people think to get them to commit murders like Charles Manson and the family, or the way that the Zodiac Killer did, or the way that David Berkowitz did. I mean, where are you going with all this? You could just, have some type of nuclear war, right, and wipe out millions, if not billions, of people. Well, here's the thing. If you were to do that, then you wouldn't have the power anymore. Of course, you're going to have somebody like Adolf Hitler who rises to power, and then he has a very harsh fall. I don't believe that Hitler moved to Argentina and just took on another life, or that other theory that the Nazis actually built this underground camp in Antarctica. I have an episode about that. That was mentioned in the book Lords of Chaos. They discussed that theory. I don't subscribe to those. And I was just listening to an episode from Philip Short about Pol Pot, the Cambodian dictator who went through that same cycle, did some very, very atrocious things, and then taken out of power. It does not last. You cannot preserve the power structure by launching that type of global warfare, even if it's an internal war where you have mass slaughter and genocide. Eventually, somebody's going to put a stop to that. But if you control how people think, you control everything. And yes, I stole that from Webster Tarley, the guy that I was listening to in 2020. So, this is where a lot of these theories about how there's this global elite desire to control the human thought process. And I think that these theories are so much more valuable to discuss than the whole type of who was the CIA operative that was working in the shadows behind Manson or behind the Zodiac Killer or behind David Berkowitz and the Son of Sam slayings. Because it doesn't require the actions of a single CIA operative. Instead, people have been influenced to think in a certain way, so then they commit these crimes because of propaganda, because of brainwashing, because of influences from works of literature, or even from underground movements that have been created, and they've been created to persuade people to commit these types of destructive actions. It's not so much that one person in the Manson family was a CIA operative whispering in Charlie's ear, "Hey, we need to kill Sharon Tate." I mean, we can speculate all day about who that is, and I have my own theories about who that could have been, if, right? But that is just an if, it's just a maybe. What I think is definitely happening is that pieces of literature have been created to influence the way people think, and then people form these little groups that are circulating around the ideas that have been distributed in these types of literature. And the origin of the literature can be the CIA, or it can be somebody who gets promoted by the CIA, or even before the CIA, the OSS. And it can also just be from people who have been paid agents by someone who is of a different elite circle, not even using any type of governmental chain. And then that brings us to how these things would fall into place, because when I was listening to that interview with Howard Davis on the Tate LaBianca radio program, he talked about how the Manson family wanted to bring their reign of terror to 3 cities in California, The first was Los Angeles, of course, that's the most famous, and the whole LA County, the area, and so on. The second was San Francisco, in the mind of Howard Davis. He's the author of the Zodiac Manson connection. So you have Charles Manson operating in the South in the summer of 1969, and you have the Zodiac Killer operating in the north of California in 1969. It's going side by side. I mean, the dates match up very, very closely. It's the summer and fall of 69 for the Zodiac Killer, the summer and fall of 69 for Charles Manson. And what Howard Davis predicts is that the third city that Charles Manson was talking about would have been San Diego, but of course the plans were interrupted. Charles Manson was apprehended, and the Zodiac Killer went silent after, I shouldn't say the Zodiac Killer went silent, that's a lie. The Zodiac Killer stopped killing officially after October 11th of 1969, when there was the final confirmed Zodiac shooting, and that was the murder of Paul Stine, the taxi driver. The Zodiac would then go on to write numerous pieces of writing, including the letters, the ciphers, as well as making various cards, including the Halloween card, the Peek Through the Pines card, and even the Eureka card, which would go into 1990. The Zodiac did not stay silent at all. I want to be very clear about that, but the Zodiac stopped committing what are known as the canonical crimes. Everything after October 11th of 1969 has been, it hasn't been confirmed to be genuine Zodiac activity. Now, is there this type of CIA operation going on where they want to influence people to commit these destructive tendencies? What I think the CIA likes to do is to just put something into motion and see what happens. Tom O'Neill, the author of the book Chaos about the Manson family, said this very clearly. The CIA was fascinated and wanted to know, why do some people experience LSD in different ways? Why do some people trip on LSD and have this mystical spiritual experience, and other people will trip on LSD and then they'll just go back to normal, like, okay, yeah, I was high on drugs, but my life didn't change. They wanted to understand that type of process, and they wanted to understand what is happening with the human brain. And there are even some other things people can say about ecstasy, about how ecstasy can alleviate the suffering that comes from post-traumatic stress disorder, and some people even think there's a spiritual component in that. So when it comes to controlling how people think, let's not pretend that the CIA is not heavily involved with that. We have Operation Mockingbird, which is all about the distortion and manipulation of media coverage. We have other speculative things that people are putting out, like Operation Terrify America, and where they want to control how people think by making them afraid of certain things. And I've mentioned this one before, but there is the theory that the CIA was behind the Manson family murders, and they were behind the Zodiac Killer crimes, but that could even go as far as saying that there was actually a CIA operative who committed two of these Zodiac murders, the murder of Cecilia Shepard on September 27th of 1969, and the murder of Paul Stine on October 11th of 69, and then the other two crimes, the Lake Herman Road murders and the murder of Darlene Ferrin, were drug-related or gang-related shootings that CIA operative, whoever he was, took credit for as a way to, once again, create this boogeyman in the dark who was set on bringing this image of terror to San Francisco as a way to make people afraid. And this is all about trying to destroy the hippie movement, to try and destroy the way that people are thinking. And here's something interesting that I did hear from Howard Davis in that interview. And that relates to the final line of the Zodiac Killer's 408 cipher, which is just a mash of letters that has not been deciphered completely to this day. No one is completely sure what that means. And what Howard Davis proposed is that it is actually in line with Robert Graysmith's solution, Robert Emmet the Hippie. And Emmet is spelled E-M-E-T. And when I was looking into Robert Emmet, it doesn't appear that if there's any chance that that is true, it doesn't appear that it's talking about the actual Robert Emmet. Instead, it's talking about a statue of someone named Robert Emmet in Golden Gate Park. This is not confirmed, being precise, being direct. This is not something that is confirmed. This is just Howard Davis's idea as well as Robert Graysmith's idea. But even in the book Zodiac Unmasked, Robert Graysmith refers to a conversation that he had with Paul Avery in the 1980s, and they're asking, what do you think that final line of text in the 408 cipher means? And Paul Avery says, I still think it means Robert Emmett. Well, what are they talking about? Why would you include the name of Robert Emmett? And who was this guy? And the stuff Howard Davis gets into is he was an Irish revolutionary. And Robert Emmett plus the hippie statue in Golden Gate Park, meaning that there needs to be a revolution, but done in a chaotic way, and hence Operation Terrify America, or just the influence that has been brought forth by what we were talking about more in the Luciferian way that the CIA is putting out these things because they want to create a sense of chaos in the world, in America, and for anyone who can be influenced by the American sphere of influential thought, if you will. Now, this is heavily connected to a larger theory about how the CIA is just the private arm of the global elites. I wish I had said that at the beginning, but this is something else that I learned about from Daniela Walls. She used to host the show United Front Radio, and she said that exact thing. I think it's a verbatim quote. The CIA is the private arm of the global elites, and the global elites want to stay in power. They want to stay in power. They want to have ideas and reasoning that justifies their lust for power, and that's the Luciferian motivation of trying to destroy humanity. I said there was a second word that we would get to, and that is Satanism. A lot of people believe that there is a satanic presence in Charles Manson. Absolutely. I mean, he was rambling on about all kinds of things. Some people might even say that Charles Manson was possessed by a demon. David Berkowitz from The Son of Sam Murders said that he received his orders from a talking dog. The dog was named Harvey. Harvey's a great name for a rabbit, not for a dog. Sorry. And then the Zodiac Killer has been connected to the satanic world through the Zodiac symbol, nonetheless. And even that show that Geraldo Rivera did in the 90s on the Zodiac Killer talked about, it really is quite similar to the cross that has been worn by Aleister Crowley, or the one that was used by Aleister Crowley, who is somewhat of a player in the world of Satanism, but I frequently cite the YouTuber Logan Albright, who gave an assessment of Aleister Crowley and said, you have to remember with Aleister Crowley, his biggest desire was to become a well-known writer and a well-respected writer, and it didn't seem like that was going to happen for him. So then he tried to become an influential figure in some type of different spiritual philosophical thought, which ended up being somewhat satanically related. In 1966, though, you have something that is a big revival in the world of Satanism, and that is the rise of Anton LaVey. Anton LaVey was the most prominent member in the rise of the Church of Satan, and the Church of Satan was a counter movement to the hippies. The hippies were gaining a lot of traction, they were gaining a lot of power, and many people just viewed them as absolute hypocrites. They thought they were all liars. You're talking about peace, love, and joy. You don't care about any of that. In reality, you're just doing this for your own material selfishness. You're just doing this because it allows you to wallow in your own feelings and emotions. They thought they were full of crap. So what's the counterculture to a counterculture? What's the counter movement to flower, power, peace, love, and joy? The Church of Satan. But quite similarly, the assessments that you can find about Anton LaVey is that he actually wanted to be a musician, but he wasn't that good of a musician, so he ended up going down the pathway of the Church of Satan. Maybe you've heard something about Charles Manson wanting to be a musician, but he wasn't that good of a musician, so he ended up being a cult leader and then developed a weird following in prison. These things seem to happen to people who just really lust after fame but just can't get it, yet still have very outgoing personalities. Alright, so you have the Church of Satan, and this could have been an influential act on the Zodiac Killer. I mean, firstly, the lust for the occult and darkness and becoming the epitome of darkness. The Zodiac frequently mentioned Mount Diablo, and Michael Cole wrote in his book, The Zodiac Revisited, Volume 3, that the Zodiac is talking about Mount Diablo, in Michael Cole's own theorizing, that is, as a way to put himself on top of Devil's Mountain. He also committed the first crime, at the Lake Herman Road murders on December 20th of 1968, which is the darkest day of the year. I mean, he expected the bodies to be found on December 21st, which would have been the darkest day of the year, the winter solstice. He's trying to become the epitome of darkness. And I had just heard this in a recent episode or discussion somewhere. Maybe it was even on Zodiac Speaking, that was hosted by Richard Grinnell and Mike Morford, where they talked about how Cecilia Shepard was stabbed and murdered on September 27th of 1969. She passed away 2 days later, but that's when Cecilia Shepard and Brian Hartnell are stabbed at Lake Berryessa. And that's the only time the Zodiac Killer is wearing the black costume that is covered. I mean, he's covered from head to toe, really. He's wearing black gloves, the black hood, and with the clip-on sunglasses. The only time the Zodiac wore that costume. Is it possible that the Zodiac was trying to bring the darkness into the light, and that some people think that he was trying to recreate the Lord High Executioner scene from the Mikado, but is it possible that he was just trying to be the embodiment of darkness? So you have Mount Diablo, you have the darkest day of the year, you have the embodiment of darkness going out, and these things are all loosely tied to Satanism, and that there could have been some satanic influence on the Zodiac Killer, even if it's going to be in the more practitioning sense. When I was first learning about Satanism, the Church of Satan, any of those things, like the people who actually practice this stuff to this day, they were sharing it in this way, saying that Satanism is not about worshiping the devil. Satanism is about recognizing that man is a beast. Man is capable of very destructive things, and that man has the ability to unleash those destructive tendencies, and this can be expanded upon by some more contemporary satanic practitioners. I have an episode about King Diamond and his satanic philosophy here on this channel, and I would invite anyone to listen to that, but he more expressed it as a way to recognize desire, only caring about people whom you are directly connected to. If you don't know the person directly, then you do not care about them, and a bunch of other layers that go into that. So not everyone is hell-bent on devil worshipping, as silly as that sounds. So that could have been, or could be, some type of influence on the Zodiac Killer in that respect, and definitely on Berkowitz or Charles Manson. It could be present. But I'm sure, if you've listened this far in, you might want to hear about something a little bit different, and that relates to the Process Church. If you get a chance to watch that Netflix special, Sons of Sam, they wanted to do an expose on Maury Terry and David Berkowitz. David Berkowitz was convicted of 6 murders and multiple shootings during the Son of Sam slayings in New York City. However, he confessed to Maury Terry on television that he only actually committed 2 of the murders, and that other people were responsible for the Son of Sam slayings. And Maury Terry, through his own investigations, believed that there was a cult involved called the Children, and that through investigation there was a link between David Berkowitz, the Son of Sam murders, and Charles Manson, and the Tate LaBianca murders, the murder of Gary Hinman, and the murder of Shorty Shea. And the Netflix special really wanted to zone in on the Children. And the Children is heavily connected to a group called the Process Church. In fact, I think the only way to accurately describe it, based on all of the different sources that are talking about it, is there is overlap between the Children and the Process Church. I'd like to read an article that comes to us about the Process Church, and this one was written by Bob Smietana, hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, and it says, "Growing up, Jared Garrett never understood the point of his family's religion. There was something about it, and the end of the world, and about always obeying church leaders. At some point he got baptized in a kiddie pool. None of it made any sense to him. By the time he was 17, Garrett had enough. He packed his bags and, like many Americans, parted ways with his childhood religion. According to data from a Pew Research Center study, About 4 and 10% of Americans have switched faiths at some point. Some leave the faith that they were converted into. As it happens, a small, nomadic, apocalyptic sect that Garrett grew up in eventually gave up its original mission. Founded by ex-Scientologists turned Satanists, the foundation of faith and God and its members awaited the end of the world to come. But when it didn't come, the group decided to rescue animals instead. Well, that's nice. It was Garrett, now 46, who ended up finding faith again. Today he is the father of 7, a volunteer, pastor, and bishop. And he has a podcast called Tales from Inside a Cult Leader, where he details his time spent with his family's spiritual sect. Jared's father, Bruce Garrett, now in his early 70s, joined the Process Church while serving in the National Guard near Boston. The year was 1970. There was turmoil in the streets and young people were demanding change. Bruce Garrett said, many had lost faith in traditional religion. New religious groups were popping up all over. The Process Church offered spiritual enlightenment and a warning about the state of the world. One of its main teachings was that human beings had chosen evil over good, its leaders harboring little hope that humans could mend their ways, said that the only way forward was to seek withdrawal from society and seek spiritual enlightenment while waiting for the world to burn. Humanity chose the easy way that leads to hell, and now its journey is ending, they wrote in an essay titled, Humanity is the Devil. Okay, so do you see how that all lines up with the Luciferian idea, the satanic idea? All of that is coming together in a single way. I mean, can I just read that again? Humanity chose the easy way that leads to hell, and now its journey has ended. So, I mean, I think that provides some insight about how this is some theoretical stuff that people are talking about, but the way they're describing the Luciferianism of the global elites is matching up to the idea that has been put forward in the Process Church. Now, where was the exact origin of this? I don't think we will ever know, because even if somebody can come forward and you find out, okay, this was the first person to talk about it publicly, did that person actually come up with it in their own mind, or did they learn about it from somebody else? And things become very difficult to document. But you have Luciferianism and Satanism, and this is also lining up with Scientology, because L. Ron Hubbard is someone who is very influential in all of this, and I was introduced to Scientology by saying that there's this guy named L. Ron Hubbard who wanted to create it just as a thought experiment to see how far people would go with it. And it seems that he got his answer. Now you have Tom Cruise telling people not to take psychotropic drugs. And the last one is environmentalism, which relates to this movement that started in 1965. I was talking about Webster Darby to begin the episode, and if you ever listen to Alex Jones, he also talks about this very frequently, that environmentalism was created in 1965 as a way for the British Empire to gain control over humanity. It's the foundation of the eugenics movement. And then it creates this idea that people need to die for the earth so they'll stop having children. And it's decreasing the surplus population, which is a myth. I mean, there is no surplus population, but they're putting out the idea that there is as part of the eugenics movement, decreasing the population, making the population smaller because it's easier to control. And it is also a counter movement to the hippies, which they view as anti-establishment agenda, or they thought that they were becoming too powerful. And I would like to conclude by discussing the 1974 murder of Arless Perry, because we've been talking about the Zodiac Killer, the Son of Sam murders, and the Manson family, and how there could be some type of link among all of them, particularly through the Process Church, and to be very clear, how the Process Church could have been either influenced, instigated, ignited, or started by some type of element from the CIA. And the murder of Arless Perry had been thought of as a link to the Process Church as well for decades. First, I'll read this article from Palo Alto Online and then respond to it. The night of Arless Perry's murder. Crawford was the one who reported that he'd found the body. of 19-year-old Arless Perry at 5:40 a.m. on October 13th, 1974, during a check at the church. Arless Perry had moved to Stanford from Bismarck, North Dakota in August 1974 with her husband, Bruce Perry, a Stanford University sophomore, according to a 2017 Palo Alto Historical Association lecture by former San Jose Mercury News columnist Scott Harold. Arless Perry's murder has been the biggest unsolved crime in Santa Clara County history because of where it occurred and how the murder was committed. On October 12, 1974, the Perrys were walking on campus when Arless and Bruce Perry got into a spat. A religious woman, Arless Perry went off to the Memorial Church to pray and arrived at about 11 p.m., Harold said. Others saw her at about 11:35 p.m. when Stephen Crawford told people the church would be closing in about 15 minutes. He told police that he locked the church at 11:45 p.m. and did another security pass at 2 a.m., but he did not see Arless Perry there. The Perrys lived in Quillen Hall in Escondido Village. Arless Perry was working at a law firm, Spade, Blaze, Valentine, and Klein, according to a 2014 story by the Stanford Daily. The book The Ultimate Evil, written by Maury Terry, states that Bruce Perry called the Stanford police at about 3 a.m. to report his wife was missing after she failed to return home. Stanford police went to the church and found all of the outer doors and windows locked. By 5:40 a.m., the police were notified by Stephen Crawford of Perry's body, which was in the east transept to the left of the church altar, laid out in a ritualistic fashion. She was spread eagle on her back, with her head to the left, her right arm pinned under her waist, and she was naked from the waist down. Someone had plunged an ice pick into her head from behind her left ear and sexually molested her with a candle. Another candle had been forced into her chest. She also had been found with wounds on her neck, consistent with an attempted strangulation. When Stephen Crawford called the homicide in to police, he oddly said, "Hey, we've got a stiff here," Harold said in his lecture. Police initially found 2 pieces of DNA evidence at the scene, a pillow nearby Perry's body that had semen on it, and a palm print that was found on one of the candles, according to Maury Terry's book. And yes, DNA did link Stephen Crawford, that security guard, to the murder of Arless Perry, and in the many articles have been written about this from 2018, and I was reading off one last week on the Anything Goes segment. The authorities tend to view that one as solved, and they believe that Stephen Crawford, the security guard, was responsible for the murder of Arless Perry. But if you didn't hear last week's Anything Goes segment on Friday, I did say one point of I guess you'd call it a counter-argument to these conspiracy claims that, say, for example, you do find out who committed one of these crimes. You find out that the perpetrator in the murder of Arless Perry was Stephen Crawford. Then you can just incorporate him into the conspiracy. Be like, okay, well, this guy Crawford, well, he was a member of the Process Church, and that's why he committed the crime. Or even if you're going to go down the CIA pathway, that all right, well, the CIA had influenced him through brainwashing and mind control and certain types of placement signals to commit this crime. And this is how these types of conspiracy theories can spread and how they can expand, because no matter what evidence that you put up against them, it can always be incorporated into the theory. It can always be incorporated into a new way. So we do have to be skeptical about these things. And the murder of Arless Perry was viewed as connected to the children. Maury Terry thought of this very clearly and thought that was the link between the Son of Sam murders on the East Coast and the activities on the West Coast. And then there could also be this link to the children, to the Process Church, that there is this Luciferian idea that's being propagated by the CIA. Promulgated would be a better word. It's being promulgated by the CIA because it's beneficial to the global elites, and they're just trying to spread this type of destruction across the planet Earth. I mean, that could be what's happening. Or it could also be that sometimes people commit crimes And sometimes there are underground movements, and they don't always have to coincide and intersect. For example, with the Zodiac Killer, many people believe the Zodiac was someone who was an outsider, not part of a movement. And in fact, if you look at the language of Charles Manson and the family, which is a group, it is a cult, and you look at the language of the Zodiac Killer, they are quite different. To say that there's this idea that Charles Manson was the instigator, or that Bruce Davis was the Zodiac, or that any other member of the Manson family committed the Zodiac murders. Let's look at some of the language. Charles Manson would talk about how he wanted the family's numbers to grow to 144,000, and they're going to go out and have this race war in the desert, and they're going to put machine guns on their dune buggies. And a lot of people speculate that Charles Manson didn't actually believe that stuff, but my response has always been, well, if he didn't believe that, he definitely talked about it. I mean, he's definitely gone on the record saying similar things. Well, where's that stuff present in the Zodiac letters? Growing numbers to 144,000. Here's another one. Living in a pit in the earth and such. Or even anything about any type of race war, or anything that has the slightest connection to um, the word and the verbiage and the literal connection to Charles Manson. I'm just not seeing it. If anything, it seems like the Zodiac Killer is someone very independent of that. And if you want to look at the Zodiac as a person who is not connected to a cult or a movement or any type of group, well, what would be the alternative? A social outsider, a reject, an outcast, someone who felt like he was a rejected lover. He felt entitled to be with women. I mean, we could be looking at a heterosexual male who wants to have a solid relationship. I mean, you could even say a homosexual male. Some guy who wants to have a relationship with a woman because he feels that he deserves it, or he feels that that's the way things should be, but something has prevented him from living that way. Society has prevented him from living that way. Gay, straight, bi, he feels like he cannot have that type of sexual belonging which he so greatly desires, so he resorts to a type of revenge against society. And was it influenced by the CIA or not? I mean, well, maybe we're all influenced by the CIA. So then the Zodiac Killer goes on to commit a series of crimes to aggravate the authorities, to make a mockery of the investigation, to write in these taunting letters saying, I'm so much smarter than you. No matter what you do, you will never catch me because I'm one step ahead of you. I am a Machiavellian narcissist. I am so intelligent that I can weave my way around the laws and rules of society. They don't apply to me because I'm the most dangerous animal of all. I'm even greater than the devil. I'm going to put myself on top of Mount Diablo. I'm the epitome of darkness, and you'll never catch me because I'm clever, cunning, and all the reasons why I should be having sex with women. So, I mean, there's definitely that type of sexual motivation and frustration. But what does that have to do with the Manson family? What does that have to do with David Berkowitz and the Son of Sam murders in the 1970s? That's why a lot of people tend to think that the Zodiac Manson connection or a Zodiac Son of Sam connection is just looking at some events that are happening within a short time frame. By short time frame, I mean less than 10 years. And they're trying to force them all together, or the Zodiac Arless Perry connection, the Process Church, Scientology, the Church of Satan, Aleister Crowley. Oh, people like to talk about that. And the Zodiac was influenced by numerous pieces of literature. Maybe there is some type of satanic element in the Zodiac's frame of mind, some way, somehow. And I think the only thing that would support that is the number of other influences. I mean, the Zodiac was into T.S. Eliot, To Kill a Mockingbird. The Zodiac was into the opera The Mikado. The Zodiac was, well, I guess he thought The Exorcist was the best satirical comedy he had ever seen. Red Rider, Tim Holt, all kinds of references are found in the Zodiac Killer's world. So, I mean, where is that stuff in the Manson family, and where is that stuff in The Son of Sam, or in the murder of Arless Perry? You could view the murder of Arless Perry as just a security guard saw a woman praying late at night, and she was in a vulnerable place. Maybe he made some advance on her that went awry and he panicked, or maybe it was all calculated and premeditated. Most of the articles simply just talk about how Stephen Crawford committed suicide, and he staged the scene to make it look like a religious or a ritualistic murder, but in reality it was just a sexually motivated crime. You even heard the thing there about the semen. So I am somewhat skeptical of these Zodiac Son of Sam Manson links, but what I think is more valuable to talk about is the type of connection to the CIA, the thing that I said that I am a genuine believer in, that the CIA might be creating these ideas, putting them in motion just to see what happens, just to see how far people are going to go, or not only how far, but why are they going that far? They're observing every aspect of it. What will people do when they're exposed to these types of ideas? There's lots of experimentation, and the ultimate end goal is mind control and furthering the power structure that is already in place, protecting the oligarchy, protecting the elites, and justifying it with experimentation and new belief systems that are beneficial to what we know as the New World Order. Okay, thank you so much for listening to this, and if you have anything to say at all about the Zodiac Killer, Charles Manson, the CIA, David Berkowitz, Arliss Perry, I want to see your comments in the section below. Anybody can write the show at BlackBoxOnlineRadio at AOL.com. You can also get me on the DMs and Instagram. In the DMs on Instagram, I always mess that up. BlackBoxNid88 on Instagram. There's a Facebook page for the show at BlackBoxOnlineRadio. My personal Facebook is also in the description box. You can also visit the Teespring page, and I invite anyone to buy a t-shirt if you like. This channel depends on your support, and the best way to support the channel is just by listening. If you want to buy a t-shirt, though, remember, being weird is not a crime. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and see you on Instagram for the bonus podcast. Until next time.